name is Sergeant First Class Simons. I'm working at the Recruiting and Retention College over here in Fort Knox, Kentucky. I'm sitting down today with Sergeant First Class Tagami with the 75th Ranger Regiment. We're going to talk to you today about what a Ranger is, how to become a Ranger, how to serve on your initial entry contract as a Ranger, and if you don't get it in your initial contract, how to serve down the road.
I'm Sergeant First Class Tagami. I'm the Recruiting Detachment NCOIC for the Ranger Regiment. So I kind of effectively oversee regimental recruiting activities across, IET through in-service.
Sweet deal. So you're here to kind of just discuss out to the forces and to the applicants and those interested in being a Ranger, the whole process and what it entails, correct?
Exactly. Hopefully by the end of this, everybody who's interested in serving in the Ranger Regiment will have a pretty good understanding of what the process looks like, whether they're a civilian right now interested in enlisting in the Army, or if they're already in the Army somewhere serving already, how they can apply to come to our assessment and selection program.
So I guess the first question for me to ask you is, what exactly is the 75th Ranger Regiment?
So the 75th Ranger Regiment is a special operations unit. We're the nation's premier direct action raid force. We specialize in missions like joint forcible entry, strategic raids behind enemy lines. We're a highly scalable, adaptable force. So the Ranger Regiment is made up of about 3,000 Rangers in total. The Ranger Regiment can conduct operations as a full Ranger Regiment, down to the squad size level if necessary, and everything in between.
So you said there's about 3,000 Rangers within your regiment, right? So what kind of MOSs can you be as a Ranger then if you have the massive 3,000 soldiers within your ranks?
So the Ranger Regiment is an infantry formation primarily. So we're made up of 5 different battalions, 3 of which are infantry battalions. Within the Ranger Regiment, though, there's about 65 enlisted MOSs, and then between warrant and commissioned officers, about 30 MOSs. And it runs the spectrum from culinary services, wheeled vehicle mechanic, cyber, electronic warfare, military intelligence, fueler, communications, and everything in between.
Are different MOSs treated differently through RASP or in the regiment as a whole?
No, in RASP 1, every candidate is treated identically. To be completely honest, the cadre in RASP 1 might not even know specifically which candidate is which MOS. So whether you're a cook, whether you're a parachute rigger, wheeled vehicle mechanic, infantryman, combat medic, you're going through the exact same assessment process. Everybody shoots the same amount, breaches the same amount, gets the same amount of combatives training. At the end of the day, every single member of the Ranger Regiment, regardless of MOS, earns their tambourine in the exact same way.
So then what is the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program?
The Ranger Assessment and Selection Program 1 is the assessment and selection program for the 75th Ranger Regiment. It's also known as RASP. So RASP 1 is for E1 through E5. It's at Fort Benning, Georgia. It's 8 weeks long. And it's a very demanding physical and mental and psychological course. We're gonna do what we need to do to figure out if you have the grit, if you have the physical capability, and the teamwork ability to be a member of the Ranger Regiment. Along with that kind of assessment, we're also going to train you pretty highly. There's a lot of medical training. You're going to do a bunch of marksmanship, breaching, which includes everything from breaching with a sledgehammer all the way up to explosives and a shotgun, as well as some combatives training.
So you mentioned E1 through E5. Is there a rank restriction for, let's say, prior service coming back in, or in-service individuals, or let's say you're a recruiter and you're trying to go Ranger after recruiting? Is there a rank restriction for which you can join Ranger Regiment?
There's not. So if you're an E1 through E5, RASP 1 is the program that you'll attend. If you're E6 or above, to include all officers and warrant officers, you'll attend RASP 2, which is also on Fort Benning. It's 3 weeks long, so it's a slightly shorter course. And it's shorter primarily because if you're a staff sergeant or above in the Army, you have some sort of like a professional work history that we can look at to determine a lot of what we need to know about you.
So now that I know we're all genders, all MOSs, full force Army, right? Are females allowed to be Rangers?
Yes, they are, absolutely.
Okay. When you're initially entering into the Army and you want to be a Ranger, right? 40 option for those are uncertain. So what does it take to qualify to be option 40 qualified when you initially join into the United States Army?
So if you're interested in enlisting in the Army with an option 40 contract, the requirements, they must be a U.S. citizen. You must achieve a GT score on the ASVAB of 105 or above. You must be eligible to gain and maintain a secret security clearance, and then you must not require any moral or physical waivers to enlist.
Is there a waiver for GT scores?
So for an option 40 contract from a recruiter, there's not a waiver for GT scores. However, if you were to enlist in the Army in your MOS of choice, when you're in AIT, there's Ranger liaisons who conduct recruiting across most AIT installations in the Army and case-by-case basis as we can approve waivers for soldiers who are in training.
So what you're saying is you don't have to get 40 option in your initial entry contract for you to go be a Ranger down the road, is that correct?
Absolutely. So the recruiting detachment has liaisons stationed at 7 different installations across the Army. Generally speaking, if a Ranger Regiment MOS is generated at that advanced individual training location, there's a Ranger liaison there recruiting out of that initial entry trainee population. So those liaisons are members of the recruiting detachment, so they're assigned to the regimental headquarters with permanent duty at whatever installation that they're assigned to. Their primary task is to brief every AIT class that comes through in an MOS that we have in the Ranger Regiment and find any volunteers, any soldiers who are interested in serving in the Ranger Regiment, and if they are interested and they're qualified, do the paperwork to basically get them put on assignment to attend RASP after they graduate. Along with conducting those briefs, those liaisons are also conducting PT on a daily basis with Option 40 enlistees and volunteers from that AIT class.
It's awesome. So in AIT, they can go to the liaison and say, I'm interested, and then they can start doing PT with someone from the Ranger Regiment to help prep them for RASP.
Absolutely. So they're doing PT with some of the similar type of PT equipment that they're going to use during RASP 1. The PT is a little bit different than PT you'd normally do during advanced individual training. It's a little bit tailored to prepare you for RASP. And along with that, apart from just the PT, the liaisons are also conducting mentorship programs where they're effectively conducting classes with that population, and they're introducing them to some of the academic material that they'll experience during RASP 1, whether that's first aid, land navigation, Ranger history, Ranger standards, kind of getting them prepped for the course. So as they're getting ready to leave AIT and start RASP 1, they're learning some more general military knowledge, and they're also feeling a little bit better prepared to begin the program.
If they complete RASP and they go through the whole process, do they have to be part of the Ranger Regiment, or can they go back to the original MOS or go back to the original unit after completion of RASP and selection process?
So the Ranger Regiment is an all-volunteer unit. If you attend RASP and you're selected and you're serving in the Ranger Regiment, at any point thereafter, you can voluntarily decide to leave the organization. Nobody's going to force you to stay there. The Ranger Regiment is not for everybody, but I think that generally speaking, from almost 12 years of experience in the unit, most people that come to the Ranger Regiment want to stay in the Ranger Regiment.
And so if you could take one thing that you could provide to those interested in being a Ranger, or at least go through RASP, what would be some advice that you would give them?
So I think the best way that you can prepare yourself is physically. In terms of learning skills or any sort of military stuff, right? Like whether it's shooting or jumping out of airplanes, anything like that, we're going to teach all of that to you. We're kind of pretty good at training people to learn how to do the skills required of a Ranger. What we can't teach you, though, is a high level of physical fitness that you have when you arrive at our doors on day 1 at our selection and training company. There's tons of resources out there. Find a physical prep program that's tailored towards military service, and just start working on running, doing push-ups, some core work. Try and be a well-rounded individual. We don't need you to be able to deadlift 750 pounds at RASP 1. We need you to be able to do 58 push-ups, 69 sit-ups, run 5 miles in 40 minutes or faster, and do 6 chin-ups. That is the physical requirement. And then do a 12-mile road march with a 35-pound rucksack in 3 hours or less.
Okay.
And then beyond that, it's just a matter of taking it bit by bit. Don't start RASP 1 and then on day 1 be thinking 8 weeks ahead to graduation. Think about the one problem or the one task that you're executing at that time. Focus on that, do it to the best of your ability, and then move on once you're complete with that.
These standards have to be maintained the entire longevity of you being within the regiment. So let's just say 3 years down the road, they can no longer maintain the 12-mile ruck march time. Would they drop you from the regiment and send you back to the regular Army?
Yeah, so the Ranger Regiment has a thing called Summary Release Authority. We call it a Release for Standards, or RFS. So if you at any point fail to maintain regimental standards, that could be standards for discipline or conduct. That could be standards for physical ability in terms of taking a PT test, or making some sort of a egregious safety error. Any of those things could be ground for a release for standards, and then you would be released from the unit and put on assignment to a different unit in the Army somewhere.
If someone were to go through RASP because it was on their initial contract, right, and and they failed out of the assessment process. What would happen to them, whether they're 11 Bravo or another MOS?
So regardless of MOS, if you attempt RASP 1 and you're unsuccessful, you're just going to maintain your MOS and you'll be put on assignment to a different unit for the full term of your contract that you enlisted for. You're allowed to come back to RASP. Okay. So if you fail, 100% allowed to come back and reassess later on in your career.
Is there any sort of stipulations that would prevent your ability to come back and reassess?
So reasons why you could be not invited back to the course later in your career would be anything that's like an integrity violation. So if you cheat during the course, if you break the course rules, if you have a equal opportunity sexual harassment, sexual assault complaint that's found to be true, or if you quit. A big part of the RASP program is designed to figure out, who in the class is willing to quit at something. Because if you're willing to quit at something, you're probably not a great fit for the unit. So quitting during RASP 1 at any point is grounds for never to return from the course as well.
So if they had 40 option in their contract to be a Ranger, and then they get dropped from RASP, you're saying that they have another opportunity to come back down the road as well, correct?
Yep, absolutely. So if you're dropped, it's just a matter of reaching out to us at 75recruit@socom.mil. That's how you go about beginning the application process to come back and assess later on.
They go through basic training, and then they go to IAT, and then they go to RASP, and then they go to airborne school, correct?
Yep, that's
So what
correct.
happens is they fail out of airborne school after passing RASP?
So if you fell out of airborne school is considered part of the RASP pipeline, if you will, right? Pipeline is probably not the exact word to describe it, but to be in the Ranger Regiment, you have to be airborne qualified. So if you fail airborne school, kind of the same thing as being dropped from RASP, you're eligible to come back and reassess at a later date, but your journey is over at that point in terms of being in the Ranger Regiment for now, and you're going to get put on assignment to a different unit in the Army somewhere.
So being that they failed airborne, would they have to go through the whole process again, or just come back for the airborne training?
Yeah, you're going to go back out to the Army, you're going to serve, you're going to do your 12 months requisite time on station, and you're going to come back and do the entire process over again.
What would you say is the best benefit of serving within the regiment, or just being a Ranger?
So I think the biggest benefit of being in the Ranger Regiment is the people in the Ranger Regiment. Everybody who's a Ranger wants to be there. Everybody who wants to be a Ranger has to go to RASP and earn their position in the unit. So what that really does is it kind of creates an environment where everybody is trying to do their best for each other and for the organization. It makes everybody better. We're a special operations unit, so we're resourced like a special operations unit. We have all sorts of advanced technology, new weapons, new equipment, stuff that the rest of the Army doesn't necessarily get. All of that's great, but if all of that was stripped away and the Ranger Regiment was equipped and resourced like any other unit, we would still be special because the people in the Ranger Regiment are what make it different.
If anyone has any questions about the Ranger and the Ranger Regiment, how would they be able to get in touch with you?
So a great way to reach us is either at our email address, 75recruit@socom.mil, at any of our social media accounts, 75th Ranger Regiment on YouTube, 75th Ranger Regiment on Facebook, or at 75th_Ranger_recruiting on Instagram. If you have questions about a specific career field, we also have the liaisons set up with Instagram accounts as well. And generally speaking, each of those liaisons covers a specific portfolio of military occupational specialties, and they're usually also a member of that military occupational specialty, so they can speak to some of the specifics of what somebody in that occupation is going to do in the Ranger Regiment as well.
Thank you, Sergeant First Class Tagami, and on behalf of the Recruiting and Retention College and the 75th Ranger Regiment, I appreciate your time as well. Thank you.